just to start off, I don't think I need to tell anyone that, we're certainly in chaotic times with COVID-19. Many of us are forced to work from home. How can technology keep us secure online through all of this is a big question. What are the vulnerabilities with personal laptops, for instance? What do we need to know to defend ourselves against cyber attacks? It's definitely a growing problem in the industry today. So these are the questions we're going to address for you today. We have Bill Bovenu with us here today. Welcome, Bill. He's here today to enlighten us on new threats out there and defenses that we can take to reduce our risks online. So welcome, Bill. Bill is owner of BSC Solutions Group and has been providing managed IT services, cloud solutions, data backup, disaster recovery, cybersecurity to businesses and organizations in the GTA since 1984. So he's comes with over 30 years experience. He's an author of regular industry blogs and how-to videos. He's an experienced speaker with, he's attended many different industry events, as well as providing training for our customers, clients on various topics. His responsibilities are general management, business development, R&D, strategic planning. Basically just has a lot of diverse experience. Myself, I'm a recent addition to BSC Solutions Group, come with over 30 years experience. I probably went a little too far by putting a mask on, realizing this is a webinar, not an in-person meeting, but certainly I've been in the industry and have a background in electronics myself. And so I take tech myself very seriously. So just moving on, our agenda today, we're gonna discuss first the cybersecurity threat. What's new from the cyber criminals out there? So Bill's gonna touch base on that. Critical defense measures, what do we have in our arsenal to combat the criminals? So again, Bill will touch on that. If we get an attack, how are we gonna restore? How are we gonna get back to normal after an attack? Then we'll have some key takeaways. And then again, our free bonus offer to attendees. So again, stick around to the end. Again, hello, Bill. You there? Thank you for providing this webinar for all of us. I'm going to pass it over to you and let you go through the presentation.
Okay, thanks. Let me just switch over here and get my my deck up here. All right, you can see that okay. Cybersecurity threat.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, thanks again, Bob. So today, I'll take some of your time and share some information that hopefully should help your small business or organization or medium-sized business. First of all, let's talk about the current landscape and the cybersecurity threat. It's definitely real and growing. Many organizations, though, we've observed still aren't really taking it that seriously in Canada, at least until they've suffered a breach or they've had a close call. Small and medium businesses, we tend to see actually are probably an easier target than larger companies. Sometimes, their attitude can be, why would anybody come after me? I'm just a small guy. But small businesses are easier to breach. So small businesses don't have the same resources, the same money to have the experienced IT personnel on staff, the expensive equipment and complex software to protect their environment. And we've seen that the cyber criminals have been they're always quick to adapt to new opportunities, and certainly this spring, this summer, we're seeing the COVID-19 work from home environment has resulted in a significant surge in phishing, email phishing. Probably it's up by more than 50% since March. According to one insurance company as well, ransomware demands have jumped to over $100,000 in 2019. Prior to 2019, they were probably averaging more like $10,000, and we're even seeing some higher claims too. The highest one I've heard of is a company out of London, UK, TravelX, where they were attempted to be extorted for $6 million. So big bucks. So before we move on to the next topic, actually, Bob was going to conduct a quick poll.
Sure. So there we go. So we just got a little poll question on there. We just want to know if any of you experienced a cybersecurity breach or close call within your organization in the past year. So if everybody could kind of plug their votes in. We're just waiting for a few people. Everybody's quick today. That's good. That's good. So, okay. I'm going to go ahead and end this. So basically, it looks like most of you, probably about 60% of you, have not had any issues, but certainly the other 40% has. So as you can see, it certainly is an issue out there. So I'm going to, yeah. So
Great. Okay. Thanks.
that's everything.
Thanks, Bob. All right. So, so about half are have experienced some either near miss or have had to deal with a breach of some type. We'll run through some of the common areas, the simple areas maybe that your business organization could implement that would put some defenses in place fairly quickly, and they don't necessarily have to cost a lot of money. So, the first area I would talk about would be probably phishing training and email phishing in general. So I'm sure everybody's experienced it, but just to recap what it is, essentially, we're seeing these cyber criminals, sending phishing emails to end users, to all kinds of people in your organization. They're typically trying to induce users to either download and install an application on their computer in order to run local applications, capture data, capture credentials, or often they'll try to get the users to click on a link to a website where they potentially get the users to enter in their credentials into fake websites. So we often see this, around Office 365. Office 365 has become a really popular application, and so therefore now it's a popular target. And so for our clients, I'll give you a scenario that we see quite a bit, where maybe you've got an employee that's in the accounts receivable department. We'll say we'll take the case of Mary. She works in AR, and she regularly sends emails off to clients with their invoices and corresponds with them about wire transfers and payments. And so what happens, we've seen, is that Mary will receive an email that she thinks is legitimate. She clicks on it. She ends up on maybe a fake Office 365 web page. She enters in her credentials thinking she's maybe updating some information as the email has prompted her to do. And to Mary, nothing really bad happens right in the moment, and so she enters that in. She thinks nothing comes of it. She closes the page. She carries on. So what's happened though is that Mary has voluntarily typed in her her email address and her password into this web page, and now this has been captured and stored in a database. And so the hackers have got this information, and they will typically make this available for sale through the dark web, or they will potentially use it themselves. And so, again, Mary's, coughed up her information. Nothing necessarily happens right that minute. Maybe a little bit of time goes by, this information gets sold, maybe the hacker takes advantage of it. And so what we've seen is that somebody will come along and they will log in through the web interface to Mary's Office 365 account. And they'll kind of take a look over her email history and the people she's transacting with, and they're looking for opportunities for customers or vendors where they're dealing often with wire transfers, money transfers. And so once these guys identify a possible contact from maybe one of Mary's customers, they'll then send an email to that customer from Mary's mailbox. And so, when the customer gets it, there's nothing suspicious about it. It's a legitimate email coming from Mary. It hasn't been forged. It hasn't been spoofed. It's 100% bang on. There's nothing wrong with it, other than, they'll ask the customer then maybe to change the banking information for their next wire transfer. And then what they'll often do is they'll create a rule in Mary's mailbox to route any responses from that customer into a subfolder. So when the customer replies back, and maybe they'll reply and say, "Hey, Mary, can you confirm you sent this?" Right? It'll route to a subfolder, and then the bad actor then is monitoring that folder, and he replies back to Joe at the customer and says, "Yeah, this is Mary. I sent it to you. Please change the banking information." So Joe goes ahead. He changes banking information, and he sends the money to the new bank account, and so Mary has no idea this has gone on, and she may not even be aware of it until some time has passed, and she's looking for payment, right? And at that point, she'll be emailing Joe looking for payment. He's not responding to her because his responses are going to the subfolder, and finally she'll pick up the phone and call him, only to discover that he paid that invoice weeks ago, and that money is long gone. So, this is a scenario that we've seen play out at a number of different sites over the last few years. And so, our recommendation to work around this for your business is to get some training for your users. Everybody is always preaching at employees, don't click on links, make sure, you're suspicious of emails that you're getting. And, it's pretty tough on these employees. Some of these emails are very well crafted. It used to be, a couple of years ago that these emails were really easy to spot. They often had a lot of grammatical errors and the links in them were just so transparently fake that it was pretty obvious to spot them. But the emails now are pretty clever, and you don't, if you're getting fooled by these, it doesn't necessarily mean that your employees are not terribly bright. These could fool some bright people. So really what you need to do is provide some training to your staff. And so, so there are training services you can sign up for. Certainly BSC offers this, where we will provide basically fake phishing emails that we craft and send to your employees every quarter, and see if we can get them to click. If we can, then we'll offer them some additional targeted training. Even for those that don't click, we typically do training a couple times a year just to keep everybody in the loop as to what's happening out there with email. In the short term, I can provide you with some 3 training videos at no charge if your organization or business is using Office 365. So Microsoft is currently offering 3 phishing training videos at no charge for any of their accounts. And so again, at the end of this webinar, I'll provide you with a link to that, and we'll provide that link in our email to you as well, where you could just share this with all of your staff and they could get 3 training videos to get started. All right. The next area I would talk about would be multi-factor authentication. So also known as MFA or 2FA or two-factor authentication or even two-step authentication. So again, I would think many of you may have heard of this already. You may or may not be using it. I would suggest that over the next year or two, MFA is going to become more mainstream, and the majority of people will start using it. And so the way that MFA works is it's adding an extra layer of security whenever you're authenticating to a website. So typically when you sign into a website, you're going to enter in your email address and your password. So with MFA, you will be typically using your cell phone as a third method to generate a number that will change every 30 seconds using an application such as Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, or maybe Authy. Now, some people don't use an application, they'll just use text messages. So again, you go to a website, you go to log in. So an example would be PayPal. So PayPal has an option to use two-factor authentication with text messaging. So you'd enter your email address in, you'd enter your password, and then you click on the box to send yourself a confirmation text. You get a 6 or an 8-digit number sent to your cell phone. You then type that into the field. And so that, with that example with PayPal, that text number is going to be unique every single time you log in. All right, so it's very hard to compromise MFA unless somebody manages to compromise your phone as well. All right, so we would highly recommend that you enable MFA wherever possible. Certainly, I'd suggest you certainly start with Office 365 if your business is using Office 365. Again, because Microsoft 365 is such a target, that would be the first place you'd want to turn on MFA. Microsoft is stating that on accounts where MFA is turned on, that they're blocking 99.9% of what they refer to as account compromise attacks. So basically just stolen passwords and credentials. So you can almost eliminate this type of attack on Office 365 just by turning on MFA. Other sites where this works, typically banks. So again, here in Canada, so TD Canada Trust has the ability to use texting to log in right at the very start of their portal for EasyWeb. The other Canadian banks have different levels of MFA. Some of them will only prompt you for the MFA code when you want to perform certain account features, such as maybe a large, transfer or withdrawal, that type of thing. But certainly, TD Canada Trust, in my opinion, at least, they're the only one I'm aware of that has MFA right from the portal login. So turn it on if it's available to you. PayPal, there's so many, even social media. So Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, all of these sites support MFA. So really it's just a matter of going into your account settings and finding that feature and turning it on, and then having your cell phone handy to set it up. And you can choose whichever app you prefer. Again, I'll provide at the end of the event here, we'll provide you with a link to download these 3 different applications that we commonly recommend. So again, Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, or Authy. Authy is attractive if maybe you have employees that don't have a business cell phone, or they don't want to use their personal phone, or maybe you don't want them to. With Authy, you can install a desktop application that will do MFA for those employees and then not have to rely on a telephone. Okay. So again, with MFA, the cost for these applications I've mentioned are all free. There's no charge. So it's really more just the time and the labor to set it up that is the cost. If you're looking at Microsoft 365, you'll probably want to involve your IT support person. If you need assistance, we can offer that to you, but you probably want some help just to go through the configuration settings on Office 365 on the back end. And then of course, some of the employees might need some help with the application on their phones. Okay.
So basically, Bill, with MFA, then if somebody was to get your credentials, they would have 60 seconds and chances of that happening. So basically, it's pretty darn secure.
It is. I mean, so yes, if they manage to fool Mary into typing her email address and her password into a website, that information would really not be of any value to anybody, because when they go to log into her website, they would be prompted for an MFA code. And if they don't have an MFA code, they can't log in. Okay.
Of course, they're going to try other targets that don't use it. It's easier for them.
Of course, yeah, they'll just move on then. Okay. Now, I mean, there's no denying that as MFA gets more popular, that these cyber criminals are going to put more effort into breaching MFA. All right. Some of you may have heard of some or read some articles in the media in the last year or so. We've seen accounts at Rogers and TELUS and Bell, at all the Canadian carriers, where again, these cyber criminals have somehow identified a person, that maybe they've gotten that person's information as far as their email address, their cell number, their first and last name. They maybe even have their password for a website, and they can't get around their MFA. So one of the things that they have done is they will contact the carrier and they will request a transfer of that person's phone number or SIM card, as if that person was leaving to a new carrier, to a new phone number. And so then you do have a problem, because now, these guys have then basically, they've hijacked your cell phone, and then yes, they could then generate MFA codes on your cell phone, or I mean, it'd be their cell phone, but they've taken over your cell phone. So if you're getting text messages sent to your cell phone for MFA, those text messages are going to go to the new phone that these people have hijacked. So I prefer using an application over text messaging. And then what I would recommend is, at your carrier, if you haven't already, you should look at your cell phone provider, your account, and make sure that you have enabled all of the security settings possible to turn on at the carrier. So they will often, they have the ability to assign a PIN number to your account. So if you were to call them and say, hey, I got a new cell phone, I need you to transfer my SIM card, they're going to ask for either a secret password or a PIN number. And again, the cyber actors aren't going to know that. All right. So definitely, again, look at your carrier accounts and enable or turn on all of the security features that they make available to you in your account settings. Okay.
I think they have voice recognition as well, which is
sure. That's even better. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the carriers then have to kind of honor their process and not follow through with this. But I mean, these cyber actors can be very persuasive, you know, in trying to get the carriers to still transfer that number, you know, trying to fool them into thinking that they are representing you, right? So
Right.
that could still happen. But the voice recognition actually would probably be pretty difficult to defeat. So. Next area we'll move on to, again, would be talking about home-based workers. So again, with COVID-19 happening this year, a lot of employees have been asked to work from home. So, you know, ideally in that scenario, we would recommend that you provide your employee with a laptop computer that the corporation owns and manages. The assumption being that that computer is running, you know, Windows 10 or Mac OS, if that's your operating system. In other words, a supported operating system. We're also assuming that your business has some sort of a process to ensure that that computer is regularly patched and has antivirus or endpoint protection that is kept up to date. And so if you have employees that have been sent home and they are using their home personal computers, I would be pretty concerned about that. Are those computers, how secure are they? Are they running Windows 10? You know, Windows 7, as of January of this year, Windows 7 is no longer supported by Microsoft, in the sense that there's no more security updates for Windows 7. So if any vulnerabilities are discovered and someone's running Windows 7, there's no defense for it. So really, you know, these computers at home need to be running Windows 10 or Mac OS, again, a newer Mac OS that's supported. You know, if it's a personal computer, are the children using it? Are spouses using it? Are they playing games? You know, who knows what malware could be installed on that computer? Is there antivirus on it? Is the antivirus kept up to date? So again, with a personal computer as the business operator, you know, you have no control over that. And so you know, your network then is exposed. If that computer connects to your office via VPN or to a remote computer, you know, your whole business office is now exposed to whatever's going on in that employee's home network and on that computer. So that's a big concern for me. Other concerns with home networks, often, you know, if you're using laptops at home, they're going to be connecting via Wi-Fi. And not to get too technical, but you know, your employees and their home networks, we want to see them using what's referred to as WPA2 encryption, and that's just the level of security and encryption that's enabled on your Wi-Fi network or your Wi-Fi access point or gateway. I'm sure, you know, most people off the top of their head, they're not going to have a clue, you know, what level of encryption they're using. You know, it's something you set up a year ago or 5 years ago. So that might be something to at least consider discussing with your employees and your IT people, and putting some sort of a process in to review what sort of Wi-Fi networks they have at home, and just make sure that they're using that higher level of encryption. Okay. It goes without saying that I would expect everybody working from home would have some sort of a firewall in place. I'd be surprised if they don't, but I'm often surprised. So, so for your employees working at home, we would certainly expect they'd have a firewall in place, even if it's just the gateway modem that the carrier has provided. So Bell or Telus or Rogers or whoever the provider might be, they'll typically often provide a DSL or cable modem that will have a firewall built into it. And you know, they're not the highest end of firewall, but I can live with it. You just want to make sure that these employees at home at least do have some sort of a gateway firewall in place. Okay. So, and then just to kind of summarize on that home network, you know, your entire business network is only going to be as good as its weakest link. So again, if these employees are connecting to your business network via VPN, once that VPN is connected to your business network, everything that's going on in that home network now potentially has access to your business network. And so you are exposed there. So it's an area to pay attention to and ask some questions about, and maybe have a bit of a checklist that you make sure employees are following when they're working from home. All right.
So connecting with a company laptop that's been patched, it's being monitored, that's fine. But obviously using a personal computer, there's some concerns there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I mean, I could be convinced maybe if it's the owner of the business and he or she says, yeah, no one else uses this computer, it's just me. Okay, fair enough. But, you know, but often, you know, the children or the grandchildren are using the computers, and they're going on Facebook and they're playing games, and And again, just who knows what on earth, what kind of malware could be getting installed on that computer. So,
Right.
Remote ports, so secure remote connection. So when your employees are working from home, you're typically going to connect in one or two or three different methods. So a VPN is certainly very popular, and we're in favor of that. So if your employees are using a VPN, that's pretty good. Nowadays, many of the modern up-to-date firewalls will support turning on MFA in conjunction with VPN. So again, if you've got someone with a laptop or home computer, they're going to connect from home to your office network to the VPN. They're typically going to have a username and a password to connect to the VPN. You can often now enable MFA on top of that as well. So now again, every 30 seconds, they'll have a new code that they'd have to enter in that gets generated. So when they log on the VPN, they would have to enter the MFA code as well. So to me, just adding, again, another layer of protection for the VPN. We do see a lot of small businesses that don't have VPNs in place, and they will either connect directly to desktop computers or servers at the office using the Windows built-in RDP or remote desktop protocol application. It's a great application. We would just strongly recommend, though, that you connect via VPN first or the Microsoft Remote Desktop Gateway service before you connect to your remote desktop computer desktop. So whether it's, again, a workstation or a server. So what we've seen over the years, and it was commonplace for many years, but now it's no longer considered secure, is people would have a computer at the office. So often it's upper management, it's owners, right? It's finance people. They want to be able to work from home. So they would have their IT people forward their remote desktop port through the firewall directly to their desktop, to their computer. And then when they went home, they would have an icon that they would just configure, and they would click on it to remote desktop, and that would then just instantly connect them to their computer at the office. The problem with that is today, if you expose your computer at the office through the firewall, now it's made available for the bad actors, the cyber criminals, to just continuously brute force attack that computer with a database of usernames and passwords that they've collected over the from the dark web. And so they will just they will try combinations of millions of usernames and passwords to try to get into that computer if it is exposed to the internet. So we strongly recommend that you stop doing that immediately today. Okay, if you have people that are connecting directly to their desktops through the firewall. Okay, and so that's just something you might have to have a discussion with your IT person about, to question them about how your employees are connecting from home. The third method would be that they might be using an application that runs a little client on the desktop. So something could be, something like, TeamViewer or LogMeIn. These applications run a little app on the computer in the office. When you connect from home, you're logging in through their cloud, and then it connects to the app. It's a good method to connect if you want to do that on a one-to-one method to a workstation. Again, all I would say with them is that they all pretty much they all support the ability to turn on MFA. So again, if you're using TeamViewer or LogMeIn, fantastic, no problem. Go into your account settings and turn on MFA. So just like the VPN and just like Office 365, you would be entering in a username, a password, and then you'd have to manually type in an MFA code that changes every 30 seconds. Okay, so again, MFA, just to go back and harp on that a little bit, over the next, in my opinion, year or two, MFA is just going to become more and more mainstream, and more people will be using it more and more commonly. Okay. Next, we'll talk about password management. So, just like phishing, we talk about, all of us IT people and business owners, we're all harping on our employees, do not reuse your passwords, use complicated passwords, but then we don't really offer them any help, right? So what statistics show, and what we've seen too, is apparently 81% of hacking breaches occur due to either stolen or weak passwords. So either people are getting phished, or even they're just getting breached because their passwords are just too simple. Okay. The other methodology where their passwords are getting stolen is where they're reusing a password on multiple websites. So I'll give you an example. Let's maybe pick on, say, Staples, right? So you've got Mary, with her Office 365 password, and she's got so many passwords she can't remember them all. So she reuses them, and so Mary uses her same password at, say, Staples that she uses at Office 365. And so along comes some bad actor and he manages to break into Staples and steal a bunch of their information. And so he steals Mary's email address and password. Okay, no big deal. He can go order some paper on Mary's account if he wants. However, he's now got her credentials for Office 365. And again, because Office 365 is so popular, really, whenever credentials are discovered on other websites, it's almost, I think Office 365 is the first place that the cyber criminals turn around and try to use them and test them against. All right, so again, what we see is a lot of employees are using the same passwords on multiple websites. Or they'll use a variation just by simply adding, a 1, 2, or 3 onto the end of the password. So not very difficult for the cyber criminals to figure out. And so our recommendation to you to try to help with this problem is to provide your employees with a password manager. So again, BSC, we have a managed password manager that we can provide to you, where we can help manage the settings on the back end for your users. You don't have to get it from us, though. There are other managed passwords out there. So, really, though, if you're going to want something in your enterprise, you want something that's got some sort of an enterprise management back end, with the idea being that if, you have an employee that leaves, you don't want to necessarily lose all of that employee's, their passwords and credentials. You could then, use the management tools within the password manager to transfer those passwords from a departing employee to another current employee. Other benefits of the password managers is you can share passwords with employees within the password managers. So an example would be, maybe you have a group of 2 or 3 people that jointly work on your social media accounts. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, this type of thing. But there's just one set of credentials, say for Twitter, for your business account. And so again, if you only have one employee that has those credentials, and that employee leaves, now you've lost the credentials to your corporate Twitter account. So again, in the password manager, you can create the Twitter credentials, and then you can share that to multiple employees and make it available to them. All right, so the password managers typically range in price, often from $5 to $10 a month per employee. So it may not necessarily make sense that you would want this for every employee in your organization, but you should certainly be considering it for upper management, ownership, anybody in finance dealing with money. The other benefits of the password manager is that it will the password manager can be used to generate passwords. So, when you go to a website like Twitter and you need to create a password, we're all struggling with, what do I make my password? The password manager will just create a long, random alphanumeric password with special characters, numbers, lowercase, uppercase, and you don't need to remember your passwords anymore. So you really, with the password manager, you just need to remember your master password to get into the password manager. And then, of course, I'm going to say you're going to turn on MFA in order to access your password manager. So it takes a little bit of a leap of faith to make the decision to move forward and kind of put all your passwords into a manager. But if you take the time to understand the security behind it, I think pretty much everyone would be convinced that it's safe as long as you manage your own credentials and manage your settings properly for it. Okay.
I know since I started using it, Bill, I can't imagine not having it. And the nicest feature I liked about it was being able to launch a website right from the password manager. So you're not having to open a website and go through all that. You click the launch button, it populates your username and password, and boom, you're in. And of course, your MFA code if you're using MFA. So I love it. But anyway, that's my input on that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, once, if you've never used one, it may be a little daunting, a little scary to think about, putting all your passwords in one place. But yeah, I agree. Once you've kind of made the leap and you've started using it, within a week, you'll be wondering how you managed to get by without having it before. So,
and plus it'll even in some cases tell you if you've been if that password that you're using is kind of been breached on the dark web somewhere.
sure, yeah. There's a lot of security features that are built into the password managers that help you to make sure you're using secure passwords, and they'll give you alerts or warnings if they warn you and think you should change a password because it's not good enough. So yeah,
Right.
there's a lot of benefits to it. Yes, yeah. Last item on this slide to talk about would just be what I'm referring to as next generation antivirus, also called EDR, endpoint detection and remediation. And so with the current antivirus applications that are in use, there's so many of them. Obviously Norton was one of the early benchmark applications that first became popular. There's McAfee. There's so many. Kaspersky. And so the majority of these applications were designed in the 1990s. They're not as effective as they once were. They're relying on databases of signatures for to keep track of viruses and malware, which are just growing at crazy numbers. I mean, supposedly as many as 400,000 variations of malware created every day. And so there are some new products that have been hitting the market in the last maybe year or so. Cylance from BlackBerry, Sentinel-1 are a couple. There's a few others, and we're starting to see some of these mainstream antivirus vendors come out with their own versions of this newer generation or EDR. And so with this newer generation antivirus, what it's doing, it's not so much relying on signature files. It's relying on watching the behavior of applications that are installing on your computer. And so it's looking for unusual behavior. If it sees unusual behavior, it will stop the application from continuing. It will quarantine that file. It can trigger a bunch of alerts, certainly to the user. It can trigger alerts to your IT department so they know something's going on. And it can go so far as to even roll back and undo the changes that application was making to your computer. So if you've got maybe some ransomware that's starting to attempt to be installed on your computer, the EDR software will detect that at a certain point and freeze it, quarantine that file, and then roll back the changes that it made to your PC. So again, my prediction will be over the next year or two, we're going to see this kind of new generation of antivirus becoming the mainstream antivirus that's being used and replacing the older generation. All right.
So I guess with 400,000 viruses or malwares every day, there's no way these old virus programs can keep up. So by the time they get these new signature files, hours and hours or a day may have gone by, and boom, they were able to get into computers with these viruses. So it's definitely something that's been needed for a while.
Yeah, that's accurate. That's for sure. Recovery. So if you do have a breach, what are you going to do about it, right? So we'll talk about a couple of areas. I've talked a lot about Office 365, so we'll start with that. So Microsoft themselves do not really provide much of a backup solution to its customers for Office 365. All right, they certainly have redundancy built in of hardware redundancy for themselves. They have data center redundancy with the sense that they want to make sure that they can keep their services running if they have a problem. But they don't really have a lot of mechanisms in place for you as the end user. If you were to say, in your Outlook, maybe you accidentally delete a folder that's got, I don't know, your customer list for the last 10 years and all of your email with them, and you accidentally purge that, they will anything you delete from, your inbox or a subfolder, will go to your deleted items. But if you delete it from your deleted items, Microsoft will save it for 14 days. And so you have 14 days to retrieve it using Outlook. And if after 14 days you don't retrieve it, it's gone. You can call Microsoft and ask if they'll help you, and maybe they will and maybe they won't, but our experience has not been great with that process. So our recommendation is that you sign up for and pay for a third-party backup service for your Office 365 tenant information. So again, BSC, we obviously we sell these services, but there's other vendors that sell them. Your current IT people may sell them as well, and so you've got these applications that will back up all of your Office 3. Well, I say Office 365, your email. So they'll back up your email, your contacts, your calendar, and then they'll also back up your OneDrive documents. They will back up your SharePoint documents, and more of them are now adding Teams to their backup, which is running on SharePoint as well. So and what they do then is they back that data up and they sync it out of the Microsoft cloud to their own third-party cloud. And that way, again, no matter what happens in the Microsoft cloud, if your data on OneDrive gets corrupted by ransomware, you've still got it backed up at a different physical location. So I would strongly recommend that if you're using Office 365 and you don't currently have a third-party backup solution in place, that you get one. All right. As far as equipment on your own premises, so if you've servers and workstations, so again we're typically recommending there what we refer to as sort of image-based backup as opposed to files and folders. So make sure you're backing up a snapshot of your servers so that you can restore those servers, including all their applications, not just their files and folders. Typically what we're doing is we back up hourly during business hours, and then of course we would recommend you back up that have some sort of a solution that synchronizes off-site and out to the cloud. So for our scenario, we'll put a local appliance on a client site. We'll back up to that appliance, and then we replicate and sync that out to the cloud. The solution we offer actually has the ability to spin up backed up servers in the cloud as a virtual server. So in the event that if your business had a true disaster, such as a fire or a flood, or your servers were stolen, we could actually spin your servers up in the cloud for you and connect your employees via VPN, and at least your business could still function. Okay. Any backup that you have in place, you need to make sure that it is isolated from the rest of your network and protected, because again, these cyber criminals, these are smart guys. What we've seen is if they can breach a network, so maybe Mary's installed some malware on her computer that allows them to get remote access to her desktop, and they'll connect to her computer, and before they deploy ransomware to your servers and your network, they will look for your backup device and they will try to cripple it or even encrypt it. So they're clever because of course if they can destroy your backup, you're more likely to pay their ransomware demands versus if you have a backup that you can restore your damaged files, obviously then you're not going to pay their ransomware. Okay. And so for our clients, I guess we've been fortunate. I mean, we put good systems in place, but still we've been fortunate, and we've had some clients over the years that have had some breaches, and we haven't to this date had a client where we've had to pay any ransomware. Okay. Another area to consider as far as recovery is cyber liability insurance. So because you never know, you might have to pay the ransomware. So again, we're seeing cyber liability insurance coverage starting to become more available and more mainstream. Some of you may have some cyber liability coverage in your general liability policy. If you didn't fill out a lengthy questionnaire asking you about your IT practices, then I would assume that your coverage is likely not adequate. So a decent cyber liability insurance policy, the insurance company is going to ask you a lot of questions. They're going to ask you about all these topics we've just talked about. They're going to ask you about your backup. They're going to talk about antivirus. They're going to talk about your procedures. If you have a breach, what do you do? So if they're not asking you those questions, I would assume the coverage you're getting is probably inadequate. So you may want to talk to your broker about that, and you may need to get coverage for cyber liability insurance from a different insurance company than your general liability company. Okay, and just to point out too that if you do put in place, some of these procedures. Maybe you fill out this questionnaire and you state, yes, we make sure we have a daily backup and our antivirus is up to date and our computers are all patched. Then you need to make sure that moving forward, you live up to those expectations, because the insurance companies, they will look for any reason not to pay. So if your application says, hey, we have antivirus on all our computers, and then it turns out you get breached and that computer for some bizarre reason didn't have antivirus on it, you're not going to have insurance coverage. So, all right. So those are, basically for protection from recovery is essentially restore your data. Okay. So if you get breached with ransomware and your data is damaged or destroyed, it's pretty hard to fix it. Even if you do pay the ransomware, statistics say it's only about 50% of the time that you'll actually get your data decrypted. So you might pay all this money and still not get your data back from them. So really you want to try to make sure you have a really strong backup in place. All right, so key takeaways. This is it's complicated. You're going to really likely need to work with somebody with some experience in cybersecurity. So again, your existing IT people, we're certainly happy to help you. We do site surveys, security surveys. We can come out and help you get that sorted out. But for most business owners, I would say for pretty much every business owner, it's not something that you're going to be able to handle on your own. This isn't your industry. Obviously you're running a business. You've got your expertise. This is our expertise. So you're going to need help. All right. Keep in mind with considering your strategy and your security budget that your responsibility really extends beyond just your business, right? So you've got to consider the damage to certainly your business, your reputation. If you were breached, an example would be, we've heard about some listeria outbreaks at some food manufacturers. So I would think most people, including me, would be a little nervous about buying their food for a while. So I'm sure that would apply to your customers. If you've been breached, are they maybe going to want to enter a credit card number in on your website? If you're not doing e-commerce still, they might be a little nervous about doing business with you. If they can get your products from a competitor, maybe they just change, right? Yeah. Keep in mind too that where you sit in the supply chain, right? So are you the customer? Are you the vendor, right? So would you want to be the launching point where somebody breaches your account and then they use you as a launching point to then get into one of your customers or one of your vendors? Then what responsibility would you bear in that, right? So on that note, I mean, maybe you want to think about some of the vendors that you're dealing with, right? That, so how secure are their networks? And so it's not unreasonable that you might want to have a questionnaire that you ask your vendors to fill out and try to make sure that they're following some of these best practices, or what are their people doing about phishing? Are they patching their computers, right? So what is your risk because of that vendor? Or, I mean, customers might be a little harder to ask them to fill this information out, but you still could. And then, you need to take some reasonable measures to protect your network and your data. So, if a breach does occur, then there are potential government penalties. If you end up having a breach where personal identifiable information is disclosed, the federal government now requires that you report that. You may have to provide some identity theft protection for some of your customers, so that could be costly, and that's where a cyber liability insurance policy would come in. You could face potential lawsuits. Again, depending on where the breach is, like maybe someone breaches Mary in your company, but then they identify Joe in another company that they see he's the controller, and they breach Joe because they use Mary to send him a phishing campaign and he clicks on something because he trusts Mary, right? So then might you be sued because they used your company to get to them, right? So you need to make sure that you've got some reasonable precautions in place, because all that could still happen. But if you've got reasonable measures you've taken, you could at least certainly make the defense that you were not negligent. But if you've done nothing, then you could be viewed as negligent, and of course that's not going to stand up as a defense in court, and so you're going to end up guilty and having to pay. All right, so again, just to summarize on that point, you just want to be you know, you want to avoid the accusation of negligence. So you want to make sure that you've got a basic set of principles in place to address the items that I've covered today. All right. On that note, I'm going to wrap up and thank you. And Bob, I'll turn it back to you for any questions.
Certainly. Thanks, Bill. That was great. Lots of good information there. So this is our Q&A session. I'm going to just take a look. I know there were a few questions here. Question. Okay, so are most people, Bill, these days reactive or proactive to cybersecurity, in your opinion?
Well, we're still seeing that most of them really are reactive. And, you know, once they've kind of had a close call or a breach, you know, then they're more willing to put some of these measures in place. But you know, I would like to encourage more businesses and organizations to be a little more proactive.
I would agree. I would agree. So some of these questions we've got, I know you've answered. So what should be my first steps towards making my computer more secure? What should I do first?
Computer, well, I mean, on
computer
a computer
or
itself,
the business
yeah.
network. Like, what do I do first?
Well, I mean, on, you know, you really, you know, typically you'd have your IT people or us, you know, come in and do some sort of a report, you know. So we'll run a scan, and we have a questionnaire, and we'll go through and ask you a bunch of questions, run a scan of your network, and come back with a report of some vulnerabilities that are discovered.
Okay. Not too many questions. Is there any other questions out there? Because some of these questions we have about phishing training, how does that work for companies? I think you've already answered that, Bill. Have we been compromised before? You kind of touched on that.
Sure.
So okay. It looks like we've got everything answered here, Bill.
All right. Great.
Yeah, so we'll move on. So getting to our free bonus offer to everybody that attended today. Again, thank you for attending. Bill sort of touched on it, that we do a sort of a free assessment of your network, and it's always good to have like a third set of eyes, even if you have your own IT people or you have your own IT company, to have a third set of eyes come in and look and just see how secure really are you. You know, no obligation, no sales pressure here. It takes about 60 minutes. We can gather information and provide you with a report. You know, we may even be able to probe some ports or something and find out, do you have open ports that are vulnerable or something like that you didn't know of? So this is our free offer, bonus offer to everybody attending today. You'll see our contact information, phone number. We have our website. You can email us at sales@bscsg.com. Even if you go to our website, there's a book a free consultation page there. So there's many ways to get a hold of us. The offer is good till the end of June. And basically, we normally charge to do this about to $500 to do this assessment. So it's a pretty good offer. And again, why not take advantage of it? You're going to get a report back that really truly gives you a picture of what's going on in your network and your business. So I think at this point, we're going to do another poll question. And basically what we'd like to know is, for future webinars that we're going to be doing, we're always trying to get feedback from our participants to find out kind of what would you like to hear about. You know, we've talked about cybersecurity, we've done other webinars, Microsoft Teams, things like that. So if everybody could just sort of plug their answers in there, we're just curious to know, to get some feedback here on what would be the most popular topic for our next webinar. So, wow. So it seems a large majority here is cybersecurity threats for remote workers was one of them. Certainly password management, there's some interest there, but I guess overwhelmingly here, more cybersecurity information is what people are looking for remote workers. So we'll definitely make sure we add that into future webinars for sure. So we're getting close to, we're just about 5 minutes to the end of our webinar. Is there any other last questions at all from everybody? Anybody there? We've got our last screen up there. Again, just all of our contact information. Thanks, Bill, for giving that presentation to us. And hopefully, Yeah,
The
go
only
ahead,
thing I'm
Bill.
going to add there, Bob, is there is a link here, and I think we'll include it in our follow-up email here to a page on our website where we've got there'll be links on that page to download the different MFA tools, as well as the free Microsoft phishing training that is available to Office 365 tenant accounts.
Yeah, that'll all be sent to everyone that attended today tomorrow. So unless there's any other questions, again, thank you, Bill, and thank you, everyone, for attending our webinar. Hope to see you at the next one. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.